Well, a major development in the world with the arrival of artificial intelligence with incredible possibilities, but the risks of errors are many as well. AI needs enormous databases, and in the field of health, there is a risk of bias if women are not numerous enough and the data not used correctly. Isabelle, a founder of datacraft, is a club, a group of experts with 600 research scientists with many large companies. I give you the floor. Thank you very much. We have 42 companies now.
Oui, bonjour à tous. Quand on m'a demandé de réfléchir à ce sujet, des biais de genre qui existent dans les systèmes de...
Good morning to everyone. When I've been asked to talk about this gender bias, whether they are enhanced by artificial intelligence or not, I thought it was a great topic. Generative AI, they do happen in society, so they do happen in AI, or they are highlighted and accentuated in AI. Of course, you have to take that into account, but I wanted to talk to you about thinking about AI, whether it can help us to really be aware of this gender bias and try to eradicate them in a certain way and work on them anyhow. I think both approaches are interesting. To start with, I thought it was a topic that was highly interesting, that many people were talking and working on it, and I spoke to many friends in the health world, and how do you address this topic? And health medical centers, I thought, oh, your subject is really great, but, well, we know it's a topic, but we're not tackling it. We haven't questioned ourselves about AI solutions that we're starting to use very, very modestly in most healthcare centers, but we didn't think about it in that way. And if we did, about gender bias, they exist in healthcare centers, and how do we address them? So in the same way, I spoke to people who are in charge with everything that has to do with institutional regulatory systems for health systems. They gave the same answer. So the ones who were more advanced were a few researchers, a few doctors. I don't have the right representative sample, I'm not pretending that, but the ones who had questioned themselves about this topic were health professionals, researchers, where there are resiliences with symptoms, where there are differences between men and women, or cardiologists and other doctors, and their testimonies are interesting, and I have noted them, and I think it is very interesting. And I started thinking, what is a gender bias? I had my own idea, but I wanted a more scientific definition of it. Gender bias are cognitive bias that are due to unequal representation of men and women, which information are really feeding a decision. We know that information are paramount to create algorithm. Of course, we understand there's a real issue here, and those prejudices, preconceived ideas are unconscious, and they have been building a long time on the basis of education, of cultural environment, but also through lived experiences. And you need a real effort to really be aware of this gender bias and to accept them. Because you might think, I don't have any gender bias, but if you want to work upon it, you need to really make an effort. And why are we wondering about those questions today? Because, of course, it can contribute to a society model that will be more sustainable and fairer in its way, but also because you have potential effects that are unexpected. And for all those reasons, it is important to think about it. we were talking. Well, the World Health Organization spoke earlier. Since the end of the 80s, the World Health Organization wrote a lot about this topic and displayed many theories. So you have those bias, gender bias in the health system at all levels, everything that has to do with prevention, and it is well documented. I was very surprised. I have found work dated back from 2022 about a cohort in a prevention center of cardiovascular diseases, and there's a real difference between men and women in cardiac diseases, and there was an underrepresentation of women in the cohort, and really it is something that is quite usual, even if we see that many efforts have been done since the end of the 90s to try to balance this those differences, but everything has to do with cohort. Well, the study group, and it applies to gender bias, but for all kind of bias, you can see that the representation of the group is not well balanced. And often the diagnostic phase, when you see in the interviews that are carried out, one can see on a regular basis that the interpretation of symptoms is influenced by those prejudices and by gender prejudices. Therefore, in many studies I have found, and within the exchanges I might have had with professionals, one can see that health professionals they were going to focus on the emotions that can be expressed by women, because it's more representative, and they will focus more on scientific diagnostic, and body examination of men, where it is linked to the gender bias that we have. What we know is that there are a few diseases that will express themselves very differently between men and women. And there again, it is not documented at all. So it is a very important gender bias in our healthcare system, cardiology, but everything to do with urinary tract diseases. The treatment response is not the same at all. So it is paramount to take into account those gender bias from the onset. And in our traditional system, it is not the case. What would be interesting would be to know whether it's going to get worse with using the artificial intelligence system. Is it going to improve things or make them worse? In the World Health Organization report, there's prevention, diagnostic, but also there's a whole part also on taking care and treatments. With the care and treatments, in many studies, it's coming out of these World Health Organization report, but also in many other reports. You can see that in clinical trials, there's a real question about the presentation of men and prevention, even if it's more inclusive now, but there are more men in clinical studies. I'm going to read that to you. I have a few testimonies which I found really interesting to highlight that. This cardiologist was saying, we are caring better for people who look like us, people like us. And that was her report, and she was aware of that. She said that she takes better care of women's health when it's a woman who is caring. You can see that in many studies. There's in The Economist an article in April which was touching upon that issue, and she was saying that I find it more difficult, more easy to be show more empathy with patients I am identifying with women, because she was a woman, and she was questioning that, saying that maybe using artificial intelligence solutions, this empathic bias, to be woman or woman or men, maybe it's going to help to reduce this gender bias. Of course, that's a reflection we have. The artificial intelligence, does it have a sex or not? It was conceived, designed by human beings, so maybe it has its own bias too, and more empathy for certain patients. That is another question. But I thought it was very interesting to have this questioning. Then also now we're talking about this topic of gender bias in the healthcare system. The question now is what is different? The artificial intelligence. What is the intake, and what are the changes coming from artificial intelligence? The first thing that came to my mind a few years ago, I don't know if you remember, in 2017, the NHS, the healthcare system in Great Britain, worked with a startup that was called Babylon Health, and they designed an application that allowed English citizens to have the first advice, kind of diagnostic, according to the symptoms they were describing. It was an advice saying maybe it's an emergency, you should go and see a doctor, etc., the GP. So it was based on artificial intelligence that was proposing answers according to the symptoms. And there was a big scandal because it was tested by a woman. She was in her 60s and she was smoking, and she described symptoms of being oppressed and being breathless. And the application said, so it was either that she was depressed or she was in anxiety and panic attack. And a man had the same symptoms exactly with the same medical record, and he was told it was probably a cardiac problem, and he was orientated differently. And they stopped using this application, and it questioned the whole use of artificial intelligence, saying it was not reliable, without thinking that maybe a human GP might have had the same gender bias. Maybe it is a topic for me, and I feel really I trust. It gives me trust, because when you use AI, contrary to when you have a GP, you talk, you're a human being, you trust, but you do trust the GP or the doctor. When you use a artificial intelligence solution for such very important decisions such as health, you don't really trust the system. We work always very regularly on AI projects, and we don't trust really what is the trust. Maybe he was fed with the wrong data, and what is going to come out of it is not going to be reliable. As we always say, when garbage in, garbage out, well, that is it. You don't get the right data. So this lack of trust in technical solutions and in AI, it's actually something that is a chance that we have to grasp. It's something, an opportunity, I would say. Often we go and see a GP and we want to ask second, third advice, but we don't think about his educational system. Did he or she learn the right things? We wonder whether he or she is competent. But when you don't question everything. When you use an AI solution, you question many, many things, and you try to have something perfect. But you wonder about things that, for example, you wonder about the bias of a health professional. With AI, you do wonder. You do ask questions, and therefore, it is a question and a factor of hope to have solutions from the AI. Another point is UNESCO report I was quoting. I think it is very interesting. Look at it if you can. It's called Challenging Systematic Prejudices and Investigation into Bias Against Women and Girls in large negative models. So it is a recent report, and a UNESCO team, it was the department that was working on new technologies and artificial intelligence, tested many solutions for a large engagement model to see whether they have biased. It wasn't not just for health, just to see what were gender bias in models. So they've GP2, GP2, and Meta. Of course, every day we have new models coming out. So, of course, there's an improvement and attention that is given to those topics. But for Amadeus, what was important is that 20% of the content that was generated, that was sexist and misogynic. So, really, you think if that is used, if it is customized to make recommendations about health, it is worrying. In the exchanges that we had earlier in the roundtable, there is this thinking, reflection about whether it is intentional or not to feed information that involuntarily are creating models that have sexist biases. That's a real topic. And this very recent analysis shows that, yes, it can happen, and we can question it. I think what is important to look at, and in this UNESCO report, they chose to look at the data collection issue that is really a topic. I wanted to time my speech, but it didn't work. Well, as I was saying, what is important in this report is that there's a real focus on data, because one knows that often the AI bias is linked to the data that rehearse the model, so they are biased themselves, and if they are not corrected, they're going to stay in the loop, and it's going to highlight those biases. It depends how the model is built. So what I was saying in my introductory remarks, we don't have that many data that are tagged and associated to a real sex, whether it's a woman or a man. When you have the tag to be able to differentiate whether it's a man or woman, well, we don't have that many. So you can't question yourself about this gender bias. It wasn't really thought as a huge issue in certain study group. There is not such a big representation of women. Well, then we think that the data are not good quality data to really launch the model. So we have been highlighted a lot, the personalized medicine. It's very important. But when you think about personalized medicine, you think about giving the right treatment to each individual. But it wasn't well addressed under the gender angle. It was personalized, but the way it is conceived, we don't say we start collecting data specifically for men or women, or for women, to be able to personalize medicine. So therefore, if we want to do that, if we want to launch algorithms, you would need to collect data that are tagged and the right data. The second topic, once you have selected data, is selecting the right algorithm. And there you have algorithm libraries that are available. You have lots of open source algorithms that are open sourced, that are available. Some are you have to pay a fee. Others are developed by organizations. But one can see that there are many algorithms that were launched with a bias. Not in health, but a few years ago, Amazon used an algorithm to recruit, and the algorithm was rehearsed on population of Amazon teams decide that the best profile to be data scientist or on text messages were men, because it was only men who were represented in the personnel. It wasn't intentional at the time, but it did recreate a bias of the situation, and then another bias said that best GPs would be women, because now there are many women working as GPs. So it'd be a total gender bias to say that if data were not corrected. Also, you have deployment bias. What I mean is that once you have rehearsed an algorithm on within a certain context, if you change the context and you didn't take into account the specificities of the gender bias, when you use it within another context, it's not going to work, and you can have things that are completely wrong, mistakes that are generated by the AI. Maybe, how long? 1 minute. Okay, I'm going to be quicker. I can give you a list of good practices, and maybe I'll give you a few testimonies later. But for good practices, when you implement an AI project, what is important is to have a very inclusive team from the onset. Not necessarily experts. Inclusive means with non-experts of artificial intelligence, inclusion of the trade, the business, but also we have Asperger, autist boys, girls, and men and women who are working on this AI, and they have a different outlook on things. And in another way, you can have more women, and you can have AI solutions, and women can develop that. Governments too. It's very important. It was designed to use data in a way that is not the one done with AI. It is important to think about governments, in organization, the fact that we include everyone. We think that all stakeholders, all actors have the right understanding of this topic. What can we do and cannot do with AI? I think it's very important to use the AI correctly within their organization. In France, trade unions are now thinking about that, to saying that we're going to give tools to workers' representatives so that they have the right analysis. So in the health system, it is the same. We need to have all stakeholders that are associated to that. Well, I don't have much time. 20 seconds. Okay, so one testimony. I shall finish with that. I think it was a urologist, and he said the strength of ChatGPT. He was talking about generative AI. He was talking about hypothesis generation, and it gives many hypotheses. I have a patient who's had he came for all his abdominal pain, and ChatGPT gave me many ideas of diagnostic, more or less serious. And then he thought maybe I have too many tests. But and then when you don't have the expertise, it is quite reassuring. And this patient had an abdominal transplant, and therefore the partner can be interesting. This AI can help. And as a conclusion, what I'm thinking is that we need to be heard in health matters. It's really important when you look at AI solutions. When you do that, they're quite empathetic, and they answer quite well, and people feel they have been listened to. So you think that's great. But when you carry a second study, you realize that even if there are all these positive points, people have a feeling of they've been listened to in a much better way when they speak to a human being. So it is a tool that allows to make things more reliable. It is a first listening, first reading, but then you need to have the human listening, the human contact. That is paramount. Thank you very much, Isabelle. Thanks for reminding us that we're human above everything.